Hi everyone, welcome back to another video where today we'll be discussing the use of nuclear energy. This tends to be pretty controversial, but I believe that both sides of the argument are pretty fascinating. So let's get into it. The topics that we will be discussing today are what is nuclear energy and how does it work, and the pros and the cons of using it. We define nuclear energy as the energy in an atom's nucleus that holds the nucleus together. And since we know that all matter consists of atoms, this energy is fairly ubiquitous. I drew an example of an atom here at the bottom, although we know today that atoms don't really look like this. And as you can see in the middle, we have positively charged protons and neutral neutrons, and this is the nucleus. So we need to have really strong energy in the center to hold it together because the positively charged protons, since they have the same charge, are going to try to repel each other. Think about how when you try to put two positively charged magnets next to each other, they try to repel. The same thing happens in the nucleus. That's why we have such strong energy there. There are two different ways in which we can harness this energy. The first being fusion, where we will combine two lighter atomic nuclei to make one heavier atomic nucleus. Fission is quite the opposite. That's where we take one heavier atomic nucleus and break it down into two lighter atomic nuclei. Fusion tends to be super unstable, so it's done in places like the sun, while fission we can manage to do in our nuclear power plants because it's much more easily controlled. Here's how fission works on the atomic level. The target nucleus is bombarded with a neutron, which breaks that nucleus down into two lighter nuclei, some radiation, which is just energy, and more neutrons. These neutrons will go on to have the same effect on other target nuclei, which begins a chain reaction, which will produce more and more energy. It's important to note that the most commonly used target nucleus is that of uranium-235. Let's look at the bigger picture. This photo here is an example of a light water reactor, which is the most commonly used nuclear reactor. The process of fission that I had just explained happens in the reactor vessel. As that occurs, the radiation that's released heats up the water that's inside of the light water reactor. As we know, the water, as it gets hotter, will turn into steam, and that steam will be used to move the turbine, therefore generating electricity. And that's how nuclear power plants use nuclear energy to generate electricity for us. Now let's talk about the pros of using nuclear energy. First off, it could put an end to climate change. As we learned in one of my previous videos, climate change is caused by an abundance of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, which are released when we burn fossil fuels. When we get more of our energy from nuclear power plants, we're actually reducing carbon dioxide emissions that come from burning fossil fuels. Moreover, the byproducts from obtaining nuclear energy are not released into the air like when we burn fossil fuels. This will prevent a lot of air pollution-related illnesses, such as lung cancer. But we still need to recognize that although nuclear energy may be healthier and cleaner than burning fossil fuels, it's still not as good as renewable energy, such as solar, wind, or water. Another benefit of nuclear energy is that it has high energy density, meaning we're getting a lot of energy out of it. We've been using uranium for many years, but recently we've been paying a lot more attention to thorium. Using both of these will last us a long, long time. Just 1 ton of thorium will produce the same amount of energy as 200 tons of uranium, which will produce the same amount of energy as 3.5 million tons of coal. So as you can see, we're getting a lot more out of this than burning coal. One final pro is that using nuclear energy tends to be cheaper than fossil fuels. The only issue is a lot of people won't invest in nuclear power plants because it seems pretty risky, and here's why. First and foremost are the accidental disasters you may have heard of. You're probably familiar with Chernobyl, but there have actually been many others, where some have been controlled while some have not been controlled. It's estimated that these have resulted in thousands of deaths, and now certain parts of the world can't be inhabited for decades. Another risk is the threat of nuclear weapons, such as atomic bombs that have been known to destroy entire cities, like in World War II. The problem here is that if someone were to use nuclear energy to create nuclear weapons, we would kind of have no idea, because it's pretty hard to distinguish this from peaceful use of nuclear energy. Finally, there's the risk of pollution. A lot of waste that comes from nuclear power plants is radioactive, and harmful chemicals and elements, such as plutonium, could be deadly. 1 milligram of plutonium could kill a person. It takes 10,000s of years for these elements to lose their radioactivity. And in the meantime, where would we even put the waste? These are the reasons why many consider nuclear energy to be risky and not worth it. And that's the video. So today, to summarize, we talked about what nuclear energy is and the best way that we can harness it. We talked about the pros of using nuclear energy and the cons. And now it's up to you to figure out whether you think it's worth the risk. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!